Maidstone Borough Council violates legal obligations by enforcing policies without public consent or valid justification. The Council is proceeding with housing developments without demonstrating a clear local housing need. Maidstone Borough Council has confirmed through a Freedom of Information response that it does not hold essential data on housing applicants. The Climate Change Act 2008 requires environmental policies to be proportionate and evidence-based. Yet, Maidstone Borough Council enforces draconian net zero measures, restricting residents and businesses, despite the UK contributing less than 1% to global CO2 emissions. Kent's CO2 contribution is so small that these policies are statistically insignificant. Despite this, they are being used to justify costly decarbonisation schemes, increases in parking charges, planning.
Sound like you're making the park a little bit elitist. The putting up of parking charges in Moat Park from £2 to £3 for 6 hours is a 50% uplift, and the kicking into the long grass of the new leisure centre seems to indicate a disinterest of sport and leisure and the health and mental well-being gained from being outside.
The fact is that it is quite fiddly to play around with increases of a few pennies here and a few pennies there, so it is easier to actually administratively to actually have an increase of this level. It sounds a lot more than it actually is in its effect on people's pockets.
Planning restrictions and penalties for landlords. The Representation of the People Act 1983 protects the public's right to vote in free and fair elections. Yet, this council actively participated in a failed attempt to postpone elections, an awful breach of democratic rights. Considering the recent press release in the Kent Online about a signed letter from 12 Kent districts, including Maidstone Borough Council, to Mrs Rayner, welcoming devolution. Meanwhile, major planning decisions are rushed through with minimal public consultation, allowing unelected non-governmental organisations and private interests to dictate policies that should be accountable to the public. Considering that Maidstone Borough Council has failed to demonstrate any legal or statistical justification for its mass housing developments, overlooked its obligations for transparency, and is implementing net zero policies without a sound scientific or legal foundation, we urge the Council to provide specific lawful justifications of these actions, and if no lawful basis is found, what prompt measures will be taken to restore public trust and address these serious concerns?
Turner, firstly, the allocations of a lack of lawful basis for the Council's housing and net zero actions are completely unfounded. Planning legislation, including the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004, sets out a series of requirements for local planning authorities across England. Our local plan was agreed with the Planning Inspectorate and voted through by the Council last year. Our housing targets are lawful, even if you don't agree with them. The Climate Change Act of 2008 sets out the country's requirements to reach net zero, plus, of course, so does the science. I have no intention of spelling out the science to you, as you're quite capable of looking for the evidence yourself, even if you disagree with it. And finally, the request to postpone the May County elections was at the request of Kent County Council, not Maidstone Borough Council.
Local Government Act 1999, Representation of the People Act 1983, and the Climate Change Act 2008 all set clear legal obligations that this council appears to be violating. Question: can you confirm with the latest documented evidence whether this council acknowledges these obligations, including reasons why they have been repeatedly ignored?
Councillor Treasury. It sounds like the same as the first question. Those allegations are untrue and unfounded, so I won't be answering that question in detail. You're wrong.